Welcome to Learning Podcasts, RTS Game Design, Chapter 1, When More Economy Loses.
Today we start with a base that looks ahead. More workers, fuller stockpiles, more buildings, and it is about to die.
Picture a familiar RTS midgame. Two players are on the same map. One player has the larger economy. More workers are gathering, the base looks busy, the storage piles look healthy. If you only glanced at the economy, you would say that player is winning.
Bigger economy, better position, that is what it looks like.
But across the map, the other player has made a different choice. Fewer workers, less stored income, a larger army, a timing push, meaning an attack built to arrive before the richer economy pays off, is already moving through the center of the map.
So the player with less economy can be ahead where it matters.
Exactly. The richer base is not losing because economy is bad. It is losing because economy is only potential. The attack is real power, already moving. This is the first design idea of the series. A resource count is not a victory condition. It is a promise that something useful might happen later. Wood, food, metal, gas, fuel, credits, it does not matter what the game calls the pile. Until the player converts it, the resource is inert.
It sits there looking impressive.
And that is part of the trap. RTS games make potential visible. The player sees numbers going up and feels successful, but the opponent does not have to fight the numbers. The opponent only has to fight whatever those numbers became before the attack arrived.
Stored resources do not block the gate.
They do not scout, they do not shoot, they do not hold the front line. They are useful only if the design gives the player time and tools to turn them into action. That conversion step is where a lot of RTS design lives. Production buildings are not decoration. They are the machines that turn economy into units. If a player has one production building and a huge economy, that building can still train only so much at once. The rest of the income queues up as unused potential.
So the question is not just how much the player earns, it is how fast the player can spend it into something useful.
Right. A smaller economy with enough production can hit earlier than a bigger economy with too little production. That is why good RTS design does not let economy exist alone. It has to pass through build time, queue space, production capacity, tech requirements, and travel time before it matters on the map.
The base can be rich and still late.
And late is often fatal, because RTS games are played in windows, not averages. Then there is population. Most RTS games put some kind of limit on how many things the player can control. The exact rule changes by game, but the design job is the same. Every worker is also a choice not to have something else right now.
The worker gathers value, but also occupies part of the player's capacity.
That is what makes the economy interesting. If workers were pure upside, the correct answer would be simple. Make more workers until the map runs out. But once workers cost time, resources, attention, safety, and population, the choice becomes sharper. The player is always asking, do I need one more gatherer, or do I need the unit that keeps me alive?
The richer player may have invested in the future and underbought the present.
Exactly. The design turns economy into commitment. Not a score, not a compliment, a commitment. That is where the timing window enters. The timing window is the stretch where one player's army is ready and the other player's economy has not paid off yet. Greed is not automatically wrong. A greedy economy can win beautifully if it survives long enough. The drama is that the opponent gets a vote.
They bought the future, but the fight arrived today.
Good RTS design makes that window visible. The attacker has to commit. Moving across the map costs time. The defender gets a chance to scout, wall, reposition, queue units, cancel greed, or give up some ground. The window is not a random punishment. It is the moment where both players learn whether the economy choice was brave or careless.
Same greed, different outcome depending on when the army arrives.
Right. The design question is not whether greed should be allowed. It is how much warning, counterplay, and payoff the game gives it. Scouting is what keeps this from becoming hidden math. The rich player should have ways to discover danger before the army reaches the base. The attacking player should have ways to hide, misdirect, or punish lazy scouting. Fog of war makes the economy decision uncertain instead of automatic. It does. If the player sees no army, maybe the bigger economy is safe. If the scout spots production buildings, army movement, missing workers, or a suspiciously empty expansion, the same economy suddenly looks exposed. The design turns scouting into the price of confidence.
So the mistake is not just making workers. It might be making workers while refusing to look.
Yes, economy, scouting, and defense are one design knot. Pull on one thread and the others move. The map adds another layer. A resource near the base is not the same as a resource across open ground. An expansion behind a wall is not the same as an expansion beside a contested path. This is the simplest version of map control. The map changes what the player can safely take and defend.
The same resource pile can have a different real price.
Exactly. RTS map design decides how far armies travel, where scouts can sneak through, which expansions can be defended, and where a player has to expose units to keep gathering. That is why terrain is not just scenery. It writes part of the economy rulebook.
A rich base in the wrong place is not rich in the same way.
And a smaller army in the right place can be worth more than a larger army trapped at home. The important point is that this trap is not a flaw. It is the game. A good RTS lets greed be tempting, punishable, recoverable, and sometimes correct. If greed were always wrong, no one would do it. If greed were always right, every match would open the same way. The design has to keep the question alive.
How much future can I buy before the present kills me?
That is the shape. The designer is tuning a playable argument between economy and force, safety and risk, information and uncertainty, map control and vulnerability. The richer player losing is not a cheap twist. It is proof that the economy is connected to the rest of the game.
The match is asking for judgment, not just growth.
And that is why RTS games are such good teaching objects. They make design trade-offs visible while the player is still inside them. This series is about those trade-offs. Closed economies, where more workers eventually stop helping. Counter design, where no unit is allowed to be best at everything. Fog of war, where information has a cost. Tech trees, where every upgrade is also a commitment. Maps, where terrain decides what strategies can breathe.
And tempo, attention, movement, networking, balance.
Right. Tempo, where small advantages become match wins. Attention, where the player's hands and focus become scarce resources. Pathfinding, where hundreds of units have to move without breaking the game. Lockstep netcode, where every player has to stay inside the same match. Balance patches, where designers keep evolving the live game without losing player trust.
That is a lot of design hiding inside one genre.
Not hiding, really. Playing out in public, one match at a time. The reason this series says for software engineers is not that RTS games need to be translated into workplace stories. They do not. The game is the lesson. The useful part is that software engineers already have language for constraints, feedback, state, cues, timing, and trade-offs.
The vocabulary helps you notice what the game is doing.
Exactly. When an RTS economy stalls, when a pathfinding system compromises, when fog of war hides information and changes a decision, when a balance patch fixes one problem and creates another, you already have mental tools for the shape. But we are going to use those tools to look at the game design, not replace it.
The design stays in the center.
That is the rule for the series. The richer base loses because economy is not a scoreboard. It is stored possibility, waiting for production, population, scouting, map control, and timing to decide whether it becomes power in time.
Next chapter, we open the villager problem, when one more worker stops helping.
Thanks for listening to Learning Podcasts.